Hello, and thank you for joining us today. Today we have a special guest. Sera is here with us to give us some practical tips about the children's book industry, from publishing to marketing to the process of working with an agent. So we'll start with Sera doing an introduction and sharing with us the importance of why diverse books matter.
Hi, Artika. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Sera Rivers, and I'm a senior literary manager at Martin Literary Management. I mostly represent middle grade and young adult novels, a few picture books, and I'm desperately looking for graphic novels for children of any age. Martin Literary was founded in 2003. It's a full-service literary and media management agency, and we represent authors from children's books all the way up through adult fiction and nonfiction. And so a little bit about my background. I've always been a writer my entire life. And when I got laid off during the recession, I decided of my regular day job back in 2008, 2009, I decided to go back to college to pursue that passion in writing. So I got a bachelor's degree in journalism studies and then a master's degree in writing for children because I've always loved the teen market and everything children's books. From there, I went into the educational publishing market where I was an editor and worked on everything from teacher professional development books all the way to launching my own children's picture book and graphic middle grade novels for Avenue A Books, which was an imprint of Center for Responsive Schools. Many K through 12 teachers out there will know them by their Responsive Classroom brand. After that, I realized I really wanted to stay in children's books. And so that's when I saw this opportunity for Martin Literary, and I jumped at that opportunity to join this amazing agency. As an agent, I love that I can represent authors and illustrators from, like that write all sorts of things that I didn't have to stick with a specific type of book that I did when I was in publishing. So now I can rep whatever I want and hopefully sell them to a multitude of publishers.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing about your journey. It gives us a range of all the diverse types of roles that are available related to children's books and children's book publishing. So give us a sense of this piece. We hear we need diverse books. We see the data. Why is diversity significant in books? Why does it matter?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's a question that I believe the publishing industry is asking every day, and the awareness is growing. We live in a very diverse world, and it's vital that everyone can see themselves on the page. So there's this growing awareness that we have a gap. And I can't really speak for the adult market side of things, but especially in children's books, we really want children to be able to see themselves reflected in these stories. So the publishing industry is very hungry for that.
So that's a perfect transition then to learn more about your current role. What does it mean to be an agent?
Yes, so that is a big question. So let me just start about, I gave a very general, just generic, broad, overview of why diversity is so important in books today. But for me personally, and this ties into my role as an agent. I grew up in a very diverse community, and I was blessed to experience many different cultures and identities and traditions. And I just grew up in what I thought everybody grew up in. And it was, and so as an adult, I'm the mother of a child with multiple learning disabilities. He's multiracial. And that's when I started noticing that children's books were very homogenous, and I didn't see many stories. This is a very long time ago. He's off in college now. I didn't see very many stories that reflected my son or our family or the diverse community that I had in my neighborhood and friendships. So when I went into children's books, for me personally, I'm really looking to actively seek out books from people of all identities and cultures, because to me, that's really important representation. So, and then you asked me about my role as an agent. So the technical, that's like my passion side. The technical side of things, agents basically, in a nutshell, represent authors and illustrators who create a piece of work, and we sell their books to publishers on behalf of the clients. That is like the simple answer. The bigger answer is, before selling that book, not every agent is an editorial agent, but because I have a background in editing, I consider myself an editorial agent, which means that I really help my clients make sure that they are sending out their very best work before I put together a pitch and proposal package for editors. I also, as an agent, if an editor is interested in a book and they are able to purchase that book, I work hard to negotiate the best terms for my authors, whether it's the amount of money that the publisher gives them as an advance, or working for film and TV rights, foreign rights. Like, contracts there's so many different parts to it that I go through with a very fine-tooth comb and really try to get the absolute best book deal I can get for my clients. And then in addition to that, I also help shape my clients' writing careers. So it's not, agents don't just sell your book. They talk to you about what's down the pipeline. Do you need to brainstorm project ideas? How do you market yourself? What is your brand? So I really help build my clients so that they can have a thriving career and not just sell a book, which a lot of people don't really know all the details behind the scenes.
Very helpful. So it looks like a mix between being a coach, being a mentor, and these pieces of really being a guide on this journey that we talk about of children's books publishing. So give us a sense of what you're looking for in that manuscript. What are some of the tips, best practices? What do we need to know?
Sure. So I'm going to say this a few times, but I can't speak for every agent because we all have our own preferences and nuances and things that we want. But I think what I'm about to say is probably what most people are looking for, but this is my preference. And I'm going to start with this, which sounds very annoying. I want a book that I cannot put down and I must finish it in one sitting, unless there's dire circumstances. And so that's what we're all looking for, because those are the books that really speak to the heart and books that we love. So now I'll give more specific, concrete details. So for me, that book usually starts with a very strong voice narrative that with a fully fleshed out character who has a want or a goal and needs to overcome some obstacle, whether it's external or internal, to achieve that goal. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's a young adult verse novel. I think that is a fabulous example of voice. And that is a very strong, complex character as well. And then we move into, I'm looking for a great hook and a compelling plot. And I want something that takes a universal theme, but adds a distinct and fresh perspective on it. So a picture book example of that would be Beagle by Dan Santat. It's, about an imaginary friend, but instead of being from a child's perspective, it's from the imaginary friend's perspective, looking for that child. So that's, I think, a beautiful example of that. I also really want a vivid setting that grounds me in that story. And that's not just for fantasy and science fiction, like even real world. I want to know, where am I? Setting is just as much important to a story as plot or characters. The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas really grounds us in that city. And that's, I think, a great example of that. And then finally, the book needs to have an ending that is satisfactory. And that does not mean it has to be perfectly wrapped up in a bow. We don't need to resolve all the issues. Things don't need to be all happy and, happily ever after, but we do need to feel that the problems and have a resolution of some sort. And my favorite book for this is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So I recommend all of these books, and just to I gave them for specific parts, but I do think that all 4 of these books are fabulous examples. So I just want to make a point to say that although I gave a example for each of the things that I said I'm looking for in a manuscript, I do think that each of these books is a great example for all 4 of those. But if you're just looking for specific examples, that's why I named one for each. Those are all phenomenal books.
Thank you. Thank you for adding some new books for my reading list and some great tips on how to write that wonderful manuscript. So next, I just have to ask you, it looks like we found you. You're amazing. You will help take an author to a next level. But how do you find an agent? What's the initial steps? What are the ABCs?
Okay, so there are several ways that you can go about finding an agent. And I'll touch upon a couple of them. Social media is a great place to start looking. Twitter is, I would say, your number one resource to find agents. There's also, if you just do an internet search for literary agents and young adults, or literary agents, picture books. So if you're looking, because agents represent different things. Like I do not represent adult novels, so I would not be, an agent that someone would query for adult books. But a simple agent search on the internet with specific things about your genre is one way. There's also manuscriptwishlist.com, which lists agents and editors, and that's where they get into more specific books. So that would be where it could be, I'm looking for a Latinx young adult thriller based in Puerto Rico. So people can do specific searches for if agents are repping the book that they are writing. Another great place would be to go to writing conferences and writing retreats that include agents on their faculty. You can look in the acknowledgments of books that are similar genres as yours, except picture books, which is harder. There's no room for the acknowledgments, but you can also go to authors and illustrators that you admire, their websites, and it will say who they are represented by, most likely. I would say that, and then there's Publishers Marketplace, which is a little bit harder to find agents if you don't have a subscription, but you usually can do somewhat of a search. And then there's also Query Tracker. I think it's .net. But if you Google Query Tracker, that will also give you agents. You have to create an account, but it's free and it's a safe site.
Well, thank you. You've given us a range of ways to be able to find where there's an agent that's interested in the topic and the genre of the books that we're working on. So when you're preparing, what do you submit as a manuscript to an agent, or do you just submit your first idea? How does this all work?
That's a great question. And when I first started out, I didn't know, as a writer, I didn't know the proper way to submit to agents. So in my early stages, confession, I think you're probably the first person I've told this to, is I submitted this is back in snail mail days. I mailed a full manuscript to agents, and a very nice agent, I forget who it was at this point, wrote back and said, you don't do this. This is this is what you're supposed to do. And I recommend these organizations. And I was like, thank you so much for sharing that with me, because I had no clue. Before I get into what do you submit, I forgot to mention one thing. There are a lot of people out there. Okay, I should not say there are a lot of people. There are people out there that are not legitimate agents that might say they are agents that might want to prey on people. And so when you do an agent search, don't just see that first name, last name is an agent at their own agency, which there are agents who have their own agencies, but like, and represents, like, do your research. Like, are they attached to an agency, or, look up, like, who are their clients? Do they have reputable book sales? Like, what is their Twitter feed like? It's very, you might have to do a lot of looking, but you can see clients and book deals and all of that on the internet. So just make sure you really are careful about who you submit to. So now, what do you submit to an agent? Every agent has different guidelines, but one thing that is definite is you send what's called a query letter to an agent. And that is a letter, if you Google how to write a query letter, you will see, I love the internet so much, you will see different examples of good query letters. And I'll get into, there's a website, Writer's Digest, does a lot of query letter examples. And so you can just format exactly the way you see these examples. But that gives a brief description of the book, usually with a hook, like, 3 kids must defeat the evil monster before, I don't know, their teddy bear kingdom is destroyed. Like, that's horrible, but I'm just saying, like, you give this little hook and then you give a brief description of that book. You also include an author bio, who you are as a writer, any kind of relevant information. You do not need to be published. You can be brand new, never, it's the first thing you've ever written. We don't care about that. But if you're writing a book and there's something very specific to it that you're related to, such as the main character is, say, a lawyer, you could say, I have a law degree. If it's set in a specific country, you can say, I am from this country. Or if it's a certain identity that's been historically excluded, you would include that kind of connection. So that's the query letter. For me personally, I also ask for a full synopsis of the book. That includes the major plot points of the book, not every detail, just the major events, and it includes the ending. That lets me know, it's usually about a page long. That lets me know the full arc of the story before I even read the book. And then I personally ask for the first 10 pages of the novel. So when you're querying an agent, look at their guidelines. Some say, send me the first 3 chapters. Some say, do not send me anything except the query letter. We all have different preferences. Oh, and if it's an author, and if the author is also an illustrator, I ask for a digital file of the book dummy, and I ask for links to their online portfolio.
All right, so we're getting the reminders in from Sarah to do our homework, read the instructions carefully, and go in that direction. So if we're going to narrow it down a little bit, because some of the people who will be listening are focusing specifically on picture books, what typically happens for a picture book as you're reaching out to an agent?
Right. So again, only make sure the agent you're reaching out to represents picture books. So that is something that I've run into, where I get queries from authors of books I don't represent. I do not represent adult novels. You could send me literally the next best, like New York Times bestseller, going to sell 1 million books. You're the next Stephen King or whoever. I can't rep it. I'm not an adult. Like, that's not my expertise. So make sure that the agent represents picture books, and then they will usually say what to send them. For me, I'm very particular about what picture books I represent, and that's on my guidelines if on my website. But if I'm the person you would submit to, I ask for the full picture book sent, like right with the query letter.
Excellent. And just from different perspectives, for instance, I come from academic writing and those peer-reviewed journals. You tend to send that query letter, something analogous to it, to one law journal at a time. Do you send this out to multiple agents at a time? Is there a technique to that? Because I know we're all coming from different disciplines and trying to learn. What do we need to know about that process?
That is a great question. Thank you. So you can submit to as many agents as you want at once. I do think it's helpful to do it in batches, because if you just send to every agent you can imagine, and they all say, this book is not ready, like you need a lot of revision on this book, well, then you've just sent that to so many people that are going to have maybe have the same response. But if you send to say 10 agents at a time, or whatever number, like a 10 to 20 agents at a time, if you start getting the same feedback, like, oh, I really loved the premise of this, but the ending was disappointing, or the characterization was weaker than I thought, or I wish that you had fleshed this out, you can at least go back and revise your manuscript before you send it to the next people. Once you have your query letter out with agents, what's important to know is, say you send me your book or your query, and I say, I love this query, I love your first pages, I want to read the rest of the book, unless it's picture book, I've already read it. Please send me the rest of your book. And then you send me the rest of your book, and then I read that, and if all is well, I love this, I want to represent you. So what you then do is say, thank you. You have a conversation with the agent. You do your research on what to do if you're offered representation. Online has so many questions you can ask, because it is a partnership. So, I won't get into all that, but what you should do is tell the agent who offers representation that you have a query out with, you don't have to say how many, with other agents. Then you go to each one of them individually, and you put in all capital letters in your reply to you you do reply all to your original query, and then in all capital letters, offer of representation. And then you say, I'm following up with you on my query. I was just offered representation. Are you interested in reading my novel? And you give them 2 weeks. That's standard. Any agent who says you need to answer me today, or you have till tomorrow, or I'm rescinding my offer, is not an agent you want to work with. This is standard, giving people time to review your work. And then that way, if you get multiple offers of representation, you have interviews with people, and then you can choose the best agent that would work, that you feel connected to.
That's very helpful to understand the background and the context of process and good etiquette. So thank you for sharing it as well. So give us a sense then, what do you wish people knew about your role as an agent? Because sometimes there's the facts, and then there's fiction, those myths, clarity of what people need to know to be successful, to build that type of partnership that you're talking about.
Sure. So before I was an agent, I was one of those people that always was like, what do agents do all day? Why is it taking so long to get back to me? If I sent you a query letter, why is 2 months gone by and I don't hear anything? What does it mean? And so now that I am an agent, the first thing I say every day is what do I have time to do? So there's so much involved in agents' work that I think a lot of people don't realize. And I don't really think it's talked about a lot. So one thing I just want to say is that if agents aren't responding, it doesn't always mean they're not interested. I know every agent is different. Some have if I don't respond to you at all, I'm not interested in your book, and they'll give a timeline. But for me, I read every query that I receive. And so because of all the work I have to do during the day for my clients, and meeting with editors and negotiating contracts and helping revise my clients' manuscripts and all these other things that I'm doing during the day, I often have to read query letters and manuscripts in my free time. So it takes me a lot longer to get through those, and they're just as important to me. And I want to give equal time to people who are wanting my representation. So that, I think, is the number one thing, that a delayed response does not mean no interest. It means I have not even seen it in my inbox yet. I'm trying to think of what else. Another thing, I think fact versus fiction, for me, I am just as excited to sell my clients' books as the clients are. So I must really, really love a book to take it on, because my excitement and enthusiasm is going to inform the editors that I'm pitching to, and then they're going to get excited. So, and I'm also working on that book with my client. I read a client's novel like 3 to 5 times before I even send it out. So like fully through. So I really have to love a project. So I also want people to realize that if they get a rejection from an agent, it doesn't mean their book is not good, or that there's something wrong. It could just be like, this was a great concept, but I personally don't like cats that much. I mean, that's like, I'm just giving that as an example. So don't give up on that part. Have you heard anything in specifically that you're wondering is fact or fiction?
Well, I think just I've heard you say it multiple times now, making sure that the manuscript is in, top-notch shape, about being edited, set to go. So any tips on that? Because oftentimes I know people have an idea, they may have a concept. What's the best way, drawing upon your previous experience as an editor? What would you want people to know about that as well for their draft manuscript that they're sending in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I really recommend reading books about the craft of writing. There's so many out there, and there's so many different styles of teaching people like how to go through your book and make sure you've hit all the points. But 3 that I think are really, really good that I turn to myself for my own writing is Story Genius by Lisa Crone, Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which is a screenwriting book. It teaches you how to write a screenplay, but it can be completely applied to books, and it really saves me with plotting, with the pacing of the plot. And then The Plot Whisperer by Martha Alderson is another one. So I read those 3, and I answer all the exercises for every book, and I make sure that I'm hitting upon all of those, because if you can't answer the question, your book's not finished. And you don't have to follow each of those are 3 different processes, but I usually kind of blend them into my own, and people will find their own rhythm. I also recommend joining a writing group, not any writing group, it's just like dating. You kind of have to find the one that fits right for you, or at least a critique partner, someone, and pick ones that have people that write in your genre. So if you write picture books, don't join an adult romance writing group, because they are not going to know how to critique your picture book. So it might be fun, but you can't, they may not know how to help you as much as a picture book critique.
Thank you. I mean, that's bringing back some great memories. I was a part of an African-American women's writing group when I first started my role as a professor. And I can tell you that really ignited my passion, but also brought me with the guidance to start that scholarly research, to know about the process and what steps to take. So please take note of that reminder, find those critique partners, find that writing group, and find really that tribe, that community that supports what you're doing and that has the experience and the background and the passion that aligns with yours. I think the other piece is you're seeing so much information. I don't know if it's fact or fiction, but give us a sense of, oftentimes people hear this idea that to be, for instance, a first-time author, that you have to self-publish. Oftentimes having an agent is not even within someone's frame of reference. And usually I'm in conversations introducing the process and helping people to understand. So help us to bypass this piece that this is not for the first-time author. This is for someone who's written hundreds of books. As an agent, what would you want people to know?
So I can only speak to 2 things. One thing is, if you have self-published a book and then realize, oh, I would like to have one of the big 5 publishers publish it, like Penguin Random House or Simon & Schuster, or any publisher, publishers will not publish something that was already published, self-published, unless it sells millions of copies. And in that case, I say, why do you need a publisher? So why do you need to go that route? But So, I mean, if someone has self-published books in the past and they have a new project, an agent and publisher is fine with that. However, so for me personally, I do not look at who is the writer. I instantly go into what is this book about? What is the writing? The writing speaks for itself. You can literally say, I have never written a book before. This is my first book. I'm looking for representation. And if I love that book, I do not care. I will represent you and I will pitch you as the best person and the best book I possibly can put out there. Publishers don't care either. And actually, I'm really seeing a growing list of debut authors. So I think more and more people are realizing I don't have to be like, you have to have medical school to be a surgeon, but you don't have to have formalized training or have a whole bunch of books under your belt. Like, we are interested in the stories and the writing. And it can be your very first one. You have to start somewhere. So I wouldn't worry about that.
I love it. So here it is. You just received that invitation. Work on that great manuscript, work on the pieces of the plot, the character development, that wonderful ending. Bring all those pieces together and focus your time and attention there. That this may be your opportunity as that debut writer to change the world. So I just really appreciate that invitation. So that was one myth that I wanted to help dispel, because a lot of people think they don't have access and your gifts will make room for you. So I just want people to think about strategically where they place themselves and make the right decisions of what works for them and their vision for the future. So I appreciate that. Next, it's related to what you've been talking about so far. What other tips would you give to help an author avoid some of the pitfalls or the mistakes? And I really appreciated the tip about making sure that the agent is a legitimate agent. I also just want to give a tip: make sure the person who's helping you as the publicist is a legitimate publicist all throughout. Do your due diligence, but specifically on the writing process, what are some of the mistakes or pitfalls that can be avoided?
Oh boy. So I'm trying to think, like, there's so many. I would say know your topic and know your characters inside and out. And that doesn't mean, I know there's always that saying, write what you know or write what you don't know. Like, write what you want to write. And if it's a topic you're not familiar with, research. I mean, even if it's a topic you do know about, research. The more, I mean, for example, if you write a story, set in a city and you want to go down, the character goes down specific streets and it's set in modern day, even if you grew up in that city, 20 years ago, what do those city streets look like now? Like, accuracy is so important. So even that kind of, like, Google Maps is a wonderful way. If you can't travel hundreds of miles back to your hometown, like, is there still a subway on this street? Is there still a park here? Did a rotary get put in? Like, look for the accuracy. And that's a very simple example, but for, especially on grander scales. I also really recommend read like all the books you can in your genre. If you're a picture book author, when I was in grad school, one class we had to read 100 picture books. For one, like, that was a project. That wasn't the whole semester. That was like one project. Sit and read 100 picture books, and then we had to write something about 50 of them. So the more you read books in your genre or on your topic, the more you're going to get a feel for what is being put out there, what universal themes are being told, how is your book different? So, like, just do all the research and all the reading you can. And then also, I think it's very important to hone your craft. So I did mention that I help my clients revise manuscripts before we go to editors, but they have worked on that manuscript to get it as perfect as possible, that by the time it gets to me, it is in amazing shape. I just do a little bit more. I don't do, you should not send something to an agent hoping they'll fix what's wrong with it. It should go with being the absolute best work. Even if, people don't realize picture books are, about 500 words on average. Those are the hardest books to write because it's every single word must like have to be there. And one thing I do want to share is if an author is thinking about writing outside of their own identity, the first question that they should ask is, am I the right person to write this book? Because I think sometimes we have really great ideas, but it doesn't mean we are the correct person to write this story. So if you feel like you're the right person to write this story, answer the questions for yourself. What is my connection to this identity, culture, the folk tale that I'm retelling, and why is it so important for me to be writing this? I think that there can be a lot of pitfalls of thinking something is a really cool idea and not realizing that you're, writing something about people and identities that exist today, and you may not be the right person for that. And I think the last thing I would say for in getting an agent, and I know I've said this, is just make sure your story is a good fit for an agent. So even though I accept, for example, picture books, I am very particular about which picture book. So I don't want any picture book landing in my inbox. So if someone doesn't take the time to read my submission guidelines or what I'm looking for in picture books, I can see it right away. And so make sure that the agent is legitimate, represents your genre, and wants the story topic that you're submitting.
And that fits perfectly into the next question. What are some of the current trends in the children's book industry? How do we prepare? Where are some of the needs where you see opportunities for books?
Yes. So I'm going to start by saying I am seeing a lot of queries for witches. But I mean, every day I have like 5 new queries in my inbox for some type of witch book. What I am going to say is I really warn against writing to current trends, because what we're seeing published today is most likely bought 2 years ago. So that, if we're seeing an insurgence of vampire books, or we're seeing an insurgence of witches, for example, or whatever, that happened organically over time, where all of a sudden everybody started feeling this trend. So once a trend is shown, I think it's gone. That being said, I really think people should write the books that they love and are passionate about. And even if someone says that topic will never sell as in a children's book. Like 10 years ago, people were saying things like, you can't write religion in picture books. You can't have violence in picture books. And or not picture books, I mean, children's literature across the board. But it's like today, we are seeing, more and more things that once were like, that would never happen. And we're now seeing they are happening, because as publishing is learning about the world around us, it's learning that some of, these topics are important. So write the book that you love. Don't worry about what the market is, or if it's going to fit now or fit tomorrow. Because if you love it, it's going to shine through in your writing, and somebody is going to love it. So focus on the content of the book and making it the best that it can, and making it relatable universally, but also distinct.
Okay, you heard it here. So you've been given permission. Write the book you love. And we're going to say it one more time, maybe 3 times. It will work the magic for you. Write the book you love, because you can see the passion illuminate off the pages. So we want to make sure that it's about you, that it's about your vision, and it's something that really expresses your journey, your writing process, and something that's a gift to the world. So write the book you love. And so here it is. Let's hear more about the career development side. I'm just getting started. I work with an agent. I have that first book. What do I need to anticipate about marketing, about branding? What should I really think about building a career as a literary artist?
Yes. So it's definitely just as much work as writing a book. I think there's the business side of writing and marketing books, and then there's the creative side. So To build a career, I definitely think having some sort of online presence is very important. And I don't want to scare anyone with that because I know we all have different comfort levels. Like I am not on the newer social medias that keep sprouting up and, my nephews and nieces are like, are you seeing this new thing? Like, nope, I don't know about that. But so you don't have to join every single thing and the hottest new thing, and you don't have to keep up with everything. But I think, having a website is, even if it's basic with just like an author page and, out, of course, if you have a book coming out, like your debut book, and being on the social media platforms that you feel comfortable with, like Twitter is really big with publishing, but it also can be problematic, so I feel like how not just being on social media, but how you behave online and what your online presence is like matters as well. So because people, especially for children's book authors, because we have a certain responsibility to our audience, which is different than adult authors. So think about, how are you promoting yourself even as a human being online? What are you showing? What are you doing? How are you interacting with other people? But online presence also is a wonderful way to make connections with other authors and illustrators in your genre, doing it in an authentic way, help uplift that book you just read that you couldn't put down and be like, you absolutely have to buy this book. Connect with them, say, oh, I'm also a children's book writer, and, really just have like these conversations, and it helps build relationships. A lot of my friends I've never met in real life, and yet I feel very connected to them online, and, we're maybe writing friends or publishing friends. And so that's a really great way. I also think to build a career as an artist is to really stay up to date with what's going on in the industry. And I don't mean like follow writing, like trends like we just talked about, but like, see what are publishers publishing, what books are coming out, what stories are being told. Maybe you can fill a gap somewhere that you're like, oh, I haven't seen a book about this yet. Maybe I'll write that book. And just, continuing to learn about your craft. I have been a writer since, like, my mother says I was born a writer. Like, I just started writing at like this minute I picked up a pen. But I still constantly go to workshops and I keep learning. And even if it's like the same title, like how to make a great character or how to, plot your novel, like I still go to all of them because I learn something new every time. So I think it's important to continue to learn through workshops, writing programs, books on writing, studying other writers and illustrators. And then one final thing that I'll say is to be kind to everybody you meet. If you are at a writing conference and, even if you've had 50 books published and you meet someone who's like, oh, it's my first conference and I'm writing my first book, like, be nice to everybody. So you never know who you're talking to. You never know, where their writing career is going to take them. And you don't know who may or may not help you down the line. So like my biggest advice is, be kind, because it's a small community, believe it or not, and everyone knows everyone at some point. So I think that's the best way to build your career.
We're learning about the power of relationships, about the power of being connected, and always being on that learning journey, that we can learn something new. I mean, one of the areas that I love to connect is some of the development workshops around writing at the Highlights Foundation. Not only is it a beautiful facility, wonderful food, great company, but really the opportunity to get into that technical skill of my craft. So the same way as a lawyer, I have to go to continuing education, the same way I tune up my vehicle, I also tune up my writing skills on a regular basis as well through those workshops. So thank you for that recommendation. Next, we want to know about some of the strategies. How do I build some of the connections with diverse authors and illustrators? Where can I find that community? Where can I get more involved?
Yes, great question. I first want to say I am going to Highlights Foundation tomorrow.
Yay.
I love it there. I love it. And I'm going to plug it a little later.
Okay.
So I feel like it's so I think the best way is to build those connections organically. Go to bookstores, look online, see what books are being put out there by people from all different backgrounds. Read their books, buy books. We Need Diverse Books is a wonderful organization that has taken the liberty of doing a lot of the work for connecting with a diverse range of authors and illustrators. Their website, I believe, is diversebooks.org, and they just have everything. So I'm just going to plug that because like if I mention anything else, it's probably on their website. But I think, connecting with authors and illustrators online, but be authentic about it, promote their books. And, I think even reaching out to others, I've reached out to people and even just said, I just finished your book. I absolutely loved it. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, or can we be Facebook friends? Or, I'm going to follow you on Twitter. And so like the more that you are authentic in these connections, the more people are going to also want to promote you and talk with you and help your career as well.
All right, so here it is. Support someone else. I mean, one of the things that I do on most mornings is a book that's my morning inspiration. So I wake up with a picture book or a graphic novel and I share about it. And that has been, as you said, a unique opportunity to connect with other people all around the world. So I use it as an opportunity to read the book, get it into a little free library so it can have that continued shelf life of being a blessing to someone else. But that has really helped me not only hone my craft, but build some connections and be able to see what's emerging. What are some of the new books? What are some of the new themes? So I really like that idea of never forgetting that this is a giving community, that it's a system of reciprocity, that we support each other, build each other, because someone else's success is your success. So thank you for those reminders, because sometimes it's easy to forget. You think you're in a competition, but we all complete each other in helping to make sure that we're diversifying, that we're expanding the library of books for the next generation. So next, I want to hear a little bit more. You alluded to it with the Highlights Foundation. What are some of the organizations to connect with and opportunities for growth and development?
Yes. So I'll start with the Highlights Foundation. They have phenomenal virtual programming and as well as in-person programming. If you can make it to their campus, it's like at the foothills of the mountains. You get your own little writing cabin and they feed you, which is why I'm going for a week, because I just want to be able to sit and write and do my agenting work and not worry about anything for 8 days. And they're wonderful. And they also my time there is just to do what they call like an unworkshop, where you just have a cabin and you're on your own and there's other people on campus, but I'm just doing my own thing. But they also have wonderful programming throughout the year where you can sign up to learn, like a 90-minute craft workshop, and as much as like a whole entire week, mentorship with another author, agent, or editor. So definitely everyone look them up online. And as I mentioned, We Need Diverse Books is a really great place to start. They have resources for writers, illustrators, educators, parents, librarians, you name it. Everything you can imagine. It's a deep dive, and then you can really kind of hone what you're looking, like your search through the website to see exactly what you're looking to learn from them. Writer's Digest is a wonderful resource. They are a physical magazine, subscription based, but they have a lot of free content online. And what I love about them is if I do an internet search for Writer's Digest and agent, I usually see they do these agent spotlights. They like to highlight new agents. If you see an agent through the Writer's Digest site, it's usually, I would think 100% legitimate, but always still just like, always do more than one source for checking. But they're a really great source for that. And they, like I had said, they do really good thing with query letter examples, and you can follow the format. I do not care if you steal a format of query, like they're all basically formulaic. So, but put your own content in there. And then another place that I think is really good is the Association for Writing Professionals, I think it's called AWP. They're another organization that puts on a lot of conferences like all over the country. And they help people with different resources and conferences. Oh, and then finally, I don't know why, last but not least, but the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I always have to say that very slow. SCBWI. They are the organization that really taught me everything. They made me realize I wanted to go back to college for writing. And it's a very giving community. And I, for most people are very wanting to help new writers. And it's just a really great networking place. It's where I met Kwame Alexander, which is how you and I met.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about that. We didn't touch on that. So let's talk about the experience, how we met and the work and everything that Kwame did, and that we got a chance to go back to the motherland, to Ghana. So you want to talk a little bit about that experience and what were some of the highlights for you?
Yes. So first, I'll say I met Kwame at, like I mentioned, a SCBWI conference. It was a weekend conference. And so that's where we had met. And we became Facebook friends. So online networking is wonderful. And I saw his post that he was taking, I think, 20 writers, librarians, educators to Ghana to deliver books and supplies. And it has been my lifelong dream to go to Africa. And I know like Africa is an entire continent, but I'm like I need to go explore this beautiful continent. So when I saw that, I just felt like this is what I never knew what or why, but I was like, this is it. So I messaged him and said, oh, I really wish I could. Oh, I commented, I really wish I could do this. I wish I could afford this, maybe next time. And he messaged me and said, this is a mission trip. You can fundraise to come. So I was like, wow. So I was able to fundraise, which was wonderful. And then that's where I get on an airplane and I'm seated right next to Artika. And that's where our friendship began, this very long flight. And that experience was just, I really, as a writer, I feel very like weird that I say words can't fully describe the experience. It was just so like life-changing and wonderful. And Ghana is so beautiful. And yeah, I really enjoyed that entire week.
I did as well. I was grateful to be a part of community. Once again, you said it, but I'd be remiss if we don't highlight it again. To meet you and to meet Vinny, to meet everyone, to learn more about their work. I ended up traveling and visiting Vinny's school and reading my book there. So all those connections and those lifelong friendships were priceless. So I say this because oftentimes you can get so involved in thinking about your profession and thinking about what's going to happen next. But really, writing is a tool to be able to share stories, share narratives, and build community. So don't miss it. I saw the same thing on Facebook. A friend sent it to me. So I'm like, it must happen. I didn't have a plan on how to pay for it. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Maybe next time. And since then, it's really been an inspiration as we start and why we're here today in creating writing competitions, because I know that was one of the things that he did to help inspire the next generation of young poets and young writers. And so all of a sudden, when I went back, because we work with a community and the Akwamu traditional land, I came back with a new mission, not just to teach my leadership workshops, but help young people find the artist within, whether it's writing or the illustrating or any other pieces. So it was definitely life-changing. So I was grateful for the opportunity as well.
Yeah.
We'll
never forget it.
No. And since then, I think I've returned at least almost about a dozen times. I just couldn't get enough of being a part of the community in Ghana. So last but not least, what are some of the ways that someone wants to see some of those topics that you're interested in? If they want to hear more about you, where should they go? How can they stay connected with you as well?
Great. Thank you. So if you are interested in seeing, I have a very, very long list of things that I'm looking for. So if you go to my website, which is Sera Rivers, but I spell my name Sera, as you can see written in my box, serarivers.com. I have my manuscript wish list that says all the things that I'm looking to represent. And then I also have my submissions guidelines page, which tells you where to submit to. So I only accept queries through Query Manager, which is like an online form, but it's secure. Only I see it. It's safe. And you can also go to my agency website that if you want to learn more about Martin Literary, or if you want to see if there's other agents at my agency that might be a better fit for you, because like I said, we do represent a very broad gamut of books. I just have this one slice of children's, and that is martinlit.com.
Thank you. So we look forward to remaining connected. We look forward for opportunities to apply all the tips that you provided for us. And we are grateful for the time that you spent, because oftentimes someone has that manuscript in their heart. They don't know how to share it with the world. So thank you for unlocking the key from the heart to writing what you love. We greatly appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I greatly appreciate all that you're doing. So you're helping to uplift new authors, and that just also makes, our jobs easier too. So thank you.
Thank you. Until we meet again, happy reading. Take care.